You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. We're 1 week away from the start of the Royal Winnipeg Ballet's 2023-24 season, which opens with the Canadian premiere of a gripping contemporary telling of Snow White. Choreographed by Angelin Preljocaj, the dark, mature twist on the classic fairy tale follows more closely the original Brothers Grimm mood than the cozy Disney animated classic so many of us know well. Musically, dancers are going to be performing to music of Gustav Mahler, his symphonies. And to hear more about the selections, RWB music director and principal conductor Julian Pellicano has joined me in studio. Welcome back to the show, Julian.
Always a pleasure to be here, Simon. Thanks for having me.
And always a pleasure to have you. First things first, how was the summer?
Summer was good. Yeah, busy, traveling and doing some conducting and then taking a real vacation.
Well, glad you got a little bit of a break in before the start of concert season, which is officially back. WSO kicking off their season last week. RWB were a week away. It's an exciting time of the year, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for musicians, this is when we sort of put everything in order. At least I speak for myself. I kind of line up all my concerts, at least going to December, which ends with Nutcracker, of course, for me. And you kind of see the landscape of music that's in front of you. It's exciting because it's a lot of wonderful music coming up, and we all have to prepare and be organized with ourselves about, being able to do it.
Well, speaking of musical landscapes, Gustav Mahler is one of the big mountains to climb. And I think that I just really want to jump right into this Canadian premiere, Snow White, which uses Mahler's symphonies as the score. We're talking about a contemporary choreographer drawing on symphonies of Gustav Mahler. Can you talk about this pairing just to start us off? I mean, Mahler symphonies and dance. It seems absolutely fascinating.
Sure. Mahler was not known for writing music for dance. I don't believe he wrote any ballet music or dance music. But it's not uncommon for choreographers to create ballets with pre-existing music. Just to touch on a few RWB productions that listeners might have seen. Moulin Rouge, for example, a ballet with all pre-existing music. Peter Pan. The Handmaid's Tale. So this is one way that choreographers get inspired to tell a story. They're inspired through music that they've heard. And in this case, it's really interesting because unlike those other ballets that I just mentioned, all of the music is derived from one single composer. So the choreographer, Preljocaj, he must have really heard something in Mahler's music to want to create the musical landscape of the story of Snow White, the original story, with this music.
Yeah, really fascinating. And I mean, one thing that I think that is immediately apparent is you mentioned it's all just one composer, but there's so much music to choose from. I mean, we're not going back to front in the Mahler symphonies. In kind of setting up this interview, I asked, well, which symphonies are we going to hear snippets from or which symphonies are we going to hear? I think the easier question is, which symphonies are we not going to hear selections from?
The only symphony that is not in this ballet is Symphony Number 7 out of the 10 Mahler symphonies, the 10th of which was left unfinished, of course, and then later completed. But yeah, number 7 is the only one missing, and they're not in chronological order. We start out in number 5, and then we move to number 2, and then number 1, and then back to 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 3, and then 5, then 3. It goes like this. Yeah. But it's really uncanny when you get into the stage action and you see the story being told, and then you hear Mahler's music, how music that was really composed in a completely unrelated aesthetic also tells this story. It's kind of the root of what it means to create music for ballet or choose music for ballet. It's that music tells so much more beyond even the superficialities of what a composer might have intended. Like even Mahler himself understood that his music was all about a almost supernatural realm, that even he couldn't say exactly what every moment of his symphony was about because it came from some sort of subconscious plane. So we're dealing with music that really relates to a certain universality.
In terms of that music itself, I mean, there's a few things that I want to talk about. First, of course, the size of the orchestra that Gustav Mahler typically calls on. We're not expecting a full Mahler orchestra down in the pit, right? They simply just don't fit.
Well, yeah, I mean, it would not be possible for sure. So there have been some slight alterations to some of the orchestration in order to create a not small orchestra, quite large orchestra in the pit that serves the needs of the music. But in reality, and in fact, I took on the task of helping with some of those alterations to make it sound as good as possible. But in reality, Mahler's one of Mahler's orchestrational devices was extreme doubling. So yes, there are sometimes 5 clarinets in a symphony, but it's also because he was expecting a symphony orchestra with 18 first violins and 12 basses. So when we have a slightly reduced string section and we take out some of that doubling, we preserve the spirit of the music within the confines of the pit, and it still has the same really wonderful effect. And of course, the music itself is unchanged. Yeah, the music itself is unchanged. But I think that one other thing that RWB needs to be commended for is the fact that this is being done with a live orchestra, right? Because this is a ballet that goes, a while back, but it isn't as often done with live orchestra as it is with canned music, right? Well, that's right. Preljocaj's company in France is a touring company. And this ballet, since 2008, I believe has only been done with live orchestra 4 times. Yeah. And so, putting it on with a live orchestra is no small task, making sure that the music is organized, that the orchestra obviously is in place. And let's not forget that Winnipeg is one of the places where audiences are treated. It's hard to understand this, but is treated to ballet with a live orchestra, which is not the case in the majority of cities. So I feel very lucky, and it's a privilege to be working here with Royal Winnipeg Ballet, a company that is dedicated to the preservation of dance with live music. Yeah, we are very fortunate indeed. And sometimes we forget how lucky we are. So I think the beginning of a season, a great time to remind ourselves of exactly that. Obviously, there's a lot of music here. Again, every symphony represented, except the 7th. Yes. I don't know what it was about the 7th, but the 7th didn't make the cut. Everything else has at least a little snippet in there, a sort of patchwork score that has been pieced together, but sort of a some greater than its parts, to borrow a different musical phrase. That idea of creating its own storyline. For you, as someone who has lived with this music, as someone who has conducted the Mahler symphonies and has grown up with them, are there any particular music highlights for you when you were going through the score and you were thinking like, oh, I'm so glad that this is here and that we get to do this and present it as part of Snow White? Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a pleasure to conduct all of these moments of Mahler symphonies, and he did choose some really wonderful ones. There's a moment in the ballet where we have the opening of the 2nd symphony, which is one of my favorite just openings of a symphony out of all the symphonies ever written. The music for the Queen, or the Evil Stepmother, comes from the 2nd movement of the 5th symphony, which is just so incredibly stormy. I mean, Mahler himself says stormy, that's what it is, and that's what she is. And then, of course, the most magnificent scene in the ballet for me. I don't know, there's so many great moments, but the really striking moment is in the Disney film, which are the 7 dwarves. In this ballet, they're presented as minors, and there's this massive rock wall that the dancers actually, the choreography is suspended in air and sometimes upside down, rappelling up and down this wall, mining, and that's all accompanied by the 3rd movement, the funeral march of the 1st symphony, which is the minor key Ferrajaca. And of course, we play the complete adagietto of Mahler's 5th symphony, which is, one of the most touching and beautiful expressions of music, in the symphonic repertoire for sure. Yeah, I think that what has become abundantly clear through this conversation is ain't nobody going to be whistling while they work through this production. No, there's no heigh-ho. Yeah. It's a much darker than Disney's take on it, but really beautiful presentation of this story. Well, Julian, I want to thank you so much for coming in to tell us a little bit about it. We're a week away from the Canadian premiere of Snow White. That, of course, at the Centennial Concert Hall, September 28th, running through October 1st. We've got all the details up at classic107.com. Julian, as always, wonderful having you in. Thank you so much.
And here is the aforementioned Adagietto from the Symphony No. 5. We'll hear the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra led by Sir Simon Rattle to perform.